So when I was building my own companies, I realized that there is one way to do it, like you're seeing everywhere in the world today, is you can go and pitch to investors, raise money, and then you can become successful, or you may fail. Okay, so these are the two options, right? Or in maybe in between, you get bought out by somebody who's interested, and then you can again grow with them. So these are the various options, right? So when we were building our own companies, what happened is that we realized there are a lot of challenges and constraints an entrepreneur goes through. Can we make the life of an entrepreneur better? Can we do something about it? And so that's how we built this program where you're going and pitching to investors endlessly. Can we talk to talk to customers, and instead of building, let's say you're a startup through investment, meeting investors and investors, can we build it through what we call as customer revenues, and then make it successful? So that was the approach, and that was the thesis behind it. And just roll back, I'm saying 13 years ago, we had a support of 40 corporations like Intel, IBM, HP, and we founded that at UC Berkeley, and under Chairman Dr. Henry Chesbrough. So Dr. Henry Chesbrough is the man who founded the word open innovation. And so when we were looking for somebody who could be a good evangelist, there can be no one better than him, right? So he had already built something called Center for Open Innovation in UC Berkeley that he still runs. He still teaches at the House School of Business. And so when we went with him and we built our own companies, he agreed to be our chairman, our advisor. So he's involved with us in many ways. And so I would like to tell you that he was quite instrumental in being an evangelist for the first 3 years. He used to travel with us and talk to corporates and so on. So we had, like I said, Intel, IBM, HP, Siemens, Shell, Roche, and so on. So they were from different countries. Like we had even Furukawa Panasonic from Japan. And so these were different verticals, different countries. And then what we did was we started this as a program. And when we were running this for 3 years, he told us, Dr. Chesbrough told us, look, now you have done a lot for open innovation. Now you have to do something about entrepreneurship. And then he connected us to Saras, Dr. Sara Saraswathi. She is at the Dowden School of Business. So teaches effectuation. And just like Dr. Chesbrough was the creator of the word open innovation, Dr. Sara Saraswathi is the one who created the word effectuation. So what is effectuation? In short, it's a science of entrepreneurship. Can we teach entrepreneurship to students or would be entrepreneurs? So that was the thesis. So I will not go much deep into it because it is something I'll be presenting now when we talk. And so I'm going to just leave you with the saying that we went on to say when you combine open innovation of the large corporations, the biggest challenge for them, with the biggest challenge for entrepreneurs, which is effectuation, we created something very unique. And that is the 100 Open Startups. And so our tagline is collaborate to co create the future. And so, you can do things on your own. As they say, one and plus one is not two, but it's 11. So imagine in a room like this, we have, say, 11, 12 participants. If we all collaborate, so it is just not an addition, it's not an incremental, but it is exponential. So that is what the power of collaboration is. And that is what we have found. So just to summarize, about 21,000 contracts have been signed just in the last 3 years between 1,700 startups and 1,300 corporations. The value of these contracts are over 900 million US dollars. And these startups also went on to receive further investments from our own platform called 100 Open Angels. And also what happened is that external investors joined in to put further money. So that is in short what has happened. And we went on to create other properties like after 100 Open Angels, we went on to create 100 Open Techs, which is to rate and rank technologies from universities. Then the third program which we did was the 100 Open Corps, which is to rank corporate. So here the analogy is like when you ride a Uber, what happens is you're always rating the driver. What about the driver rating the rider? So that is how startups began to rate the corporate on the way they engage and so on. And we had a lot of methodologies and processes for the startup to work with. And that's how we created a program called the 100 Open Corps to rank the corporate. And the last one, just 3 years ago, we introduced the 100 Open Angels, which is for the executives of these companies to make investment into the startups that they are, working with or collaborating with. So that's in short, what has happened. And as I mentioned to you, we are looking at furthering this, collaborating with different ecosystems. Nearly 900 incubators and accelerators are part of a global network. So what we are doing is we are providing the next set, let's say, growth for these incubators and accelerators after incubation and acceleration. What? So we come in to say this is the next step. That is, come out to the 100 open startups and begin to engage with corporate and build your, let's say, value through its collateral, and we can say various kind of relationships that can happen, right from mentorship to offering of resources to POC or supplier arrangement, and the last one, which is for going into investments or even a buyout. So we have seen the whole journey. So we have created 16 types of relationships a startup can have with corporate or even vice versa. So here I want to mention it's not only corporate but also SMEs. So we have a relationship with both the sides, and we have created value for both the startup and the corporate. So that is something we'll go into in detail. So that's in short what we have done in 100 Open Startups.
Okay, so it's amazing. Like all the startups who works in B2B wanted to connect with the corporate, or all the startups or SMEs, they wanted to be connect with the corporate, because corporate will be a kind of long-term revenue or a long-term collaboration opportunity for every startup. Like even when I started a startup back in 2009, I thought like only if I connect, or if I can sell in a B2B space, then only I can sustain. So that's the reason like we started selling to IBM and BlackBerry and that those days. So I can easily relate with you what you are talking about. And I think like we can get into the questions directly, because it's more about we know about you now about 100 open startups. So now we can go directly into questions. So understanding the collaboration, uh, can you make more descriptive, like the corporate and startup perspective, like how the collaboration activity is happening, or what are the benefits for the corporates and startups for doing it?
Oh yeah. So I felt it would be interesting for everyone to see what we have done. So it's not something which I can say in one word, right, or one sentence.
Yeah.
It's a long story.
Probably, if you want to share any kind of presentation or something, you can go ahead.
Yes. So the idea is to share the presentation with you so that you'll be able to appreciate what has been done. Right? So are you able to see my screen?
Uh, Not yet. You can start sharing.
Okay, 1 minute. Host has disabled, it says.
Again, the same thing. So let me make you the host.
Yeah, thank you.
So go ahead.
Okay, great. So now I think you'll be able to see it.
Yes.
Great. So let me start, this whole journey. So sit back and relax, everyone. And as I said, at the end of this session, I probably will be taking 15, 20 minutes to finish this, and then we can go into the questions, and we can look at how we can all collaborate. Okay, so
Correct.
as you can see, this 13th year of the Open Innovation, it's also about 8+ years of effectuation. And so that's what has happened on our program. And you can see Dr. Henry Chesbro on the top left, and then on your right, you can see also Dr. Sara Saraswathi, the pink picture in the middle. So I have to tell you a little bit about Dr. Henry Chesbro, because he is someone quite instrumental in creating what's called open innovation and a bit of a history. So he comes from 20 years background from industry. So he used to work, the last job was at a big company called Quantum. Quantum used to make hard drives. Okay, so it's like if you know Seagate, it was a competitor to Seagate. Okay, so when he was working with them for I think it was about 8 years, he was the head of R&D, and what used to happen was he used to be developing projects, innovation within the organization. But there came a time there were a lot of bottlenecks. He could not complete the projects, etc. So he began to go outside of quantum to look for innovation and how we can source innovation, etc. So that was the background, the start of that experience called open innovation. And he found out over time that you can do it very efficiently if you were to do it outside versus inside. Doing everything inside. Uh, Things are like, big companies have a lot of process. They work in silos. There is a lot of approvals. So it's kind of a very bureaucratic process, right? So he thought, if we can collaborate very fast with university researchers, or at that time, this is quite long ago. It was in the prior to 2000. So the word startups had not come in the way it is today. It is more than 20 years ago. So he was engaging with probably some consultants, experts, which is also open innovation. In the sense, you work for an organization, then you realize there are some shortcomings, there are some gaps. How do you address those gaps? So you begin to work with others, right? So like we are doing consultants, right? A lot of consultants work with different companies. They are actually addressing the gap in the organization. So in short, what Chespro said, not all the best people in an industry work for you. They are scattered all over the world. And if you can collaborate with them, the chance of that idea or that project becoming successful is very high. Okay, so that's the basic premise behind what's open innovation. Now, I need to also tell you a bit about what is history, right? Before that, it was called closed innovation. And as you can see, it's a kind of a funnel which has got no pores. So the ideas and the IPs within the organization come out like this, and it goes to the market, right? So this is coming from internal to the employees. These are what we call as research, development, and engineering. Okay, so this is how it is happening. It has been happening like this for many years, and the product goes to the market. Okay, so this is the way it has been working for many years. So it works very well in some industries, as you can see, like chemical industry. Then maybe like when Edison started, what's called General Electric, GE. It used to work very well, right? Because everything was proprietary. You didn't want to share, other than the company that they were in. So they were all monoliths or monopolies. So they didn't want to share with anybody what they were doing. So some of the examples, as you can see, these are all great examples. It worked very well, and these are the great successes for closed innovation model. But as you heard, when these industries became competitive, more and more companies came into the same market, then they had to find differentiation. So the only way to differentiate was, as I said, collaborating with outside and bringing new technologies. So that's what you're seeing there. There's an internal technology base, there's an external technology base. And then what happens is that it mingles, and then the spin-offs can happen. You create new markets, new opportunities, and the companies can stay ahead of their own markets by collaborating constantly with outsiders. And so this is a three-dimensional view of what you saw. You can get a very good picture how it works. So as you see, there are a lot of pores. So that was the difference between the closed innovation funnel and this open innovation funnel. So these, as I said, ideas and IPs can come from outside. They mingle with what is internally, and then spin out as a new product or as a new IP. So this is how open innovation works. And so we call it also as external technology base and internal technology base. So this is something which is very clear for you. Okay. Uh, what is the logic? So this is something I touched upon already. This is the last point. It says not all of the smart people in the world work for us, right? And before that, you can also see the other points, which is to say good ideas are widely distributed. It is not with, it's a kind of, it's democratic world today, and it's not monopoly of somebody or some institution. It's available with all. So take example of AI today, right? So AI is available. AI expertise is available from different organizations, different universities, even startups. So this is a great example to say knowledge is being distributed. It's not being held with one person. Number two, also financial reasons, because if you see doing inside versus outside is definitely, much cheaper. Why corporates want to work with SMEs or want to work with startups is mainly because it's far cheaper, more efficient, and you can quickly roll it out. And of course, you want to manage the IPs. So what happens is that large organizations over the years develop a lot of IP, and only to realize by the time they come out with that IP, the market has changed. Okay, so there are a lot of IPs which are not utilized. Nearly, in every company you see 3,000 large corporations. I'm talking about 3,000 to 5,000 IPs are not used at all. So it is lying dormant. So can we also somehow bring life to it? Can these IPs be spun out through some other organization who may find it relevant and interesting? So this is also a logic behind that. And then another big problem, right, in big companies is that they all think if it was not invented in XYZ, it's not worth it, right? So this is a big problem, right? This is to do with their egos. So they feel if a particular product or IP was not developed in their company, that idea is not worthwhile. So this is called the NIH syndrome. Okay, so the non-invented here syndrome. So when this collaboration happened, when this open innovation happened, it led to shedding of those egos, and people thought, oh, okay, there are great ideas even from outside, much better than our own organization. So they began to understand and appreciate that startups do have, or even university researchers have, some great knowledge that the corporate can leverage. So that's what you're seeing here, proudly found elsewhere and verified by lab and test equipment. So this is how they came to a kind of a situation to accept that yes, it is possible. Now, for those who are interested to study further about open innovation, there are some great works. I will particularly recommend the one in the middle, open business models, and that is something which is very relevant for what we are going through today. And so, pick it up. It's available on Amazon. It's a great work of Dr. Chesper. Now, I'm coming to what's called experimental entrepreneurship. As you can see, there is a lean startup, you have a business model generation. There are a lot of works that have been done. So today, I'm going to specifically talk about effectuation. That's the work of Dr. Sara Saraswathi, as you can see. And this book is also available on Amazon for those who are interested. So now I'm going to get into this because this for whoever is here in this audience who want to be an entrepreneur or want to be even entrepreneurial, this is something which they will find very interesting. So please pay attention to this, and you can become also, in whenever startup you're planning to do or you're already involved, you'll be able to employ those 5 principles of effectuation and bring your startup to life, and in a very scientific and in a let's say a methodical approach. And that's what I'm going to show you today. And I need to also mention about, in the meantime, the startups were growing. So in 2015, some of these great works happened, and that is when the corporates began to look at startups seriously. So prior to that, these corporates were viewing the startup as frivolous, a waste of time, and they never thought they can produce anything which can disrupt them. Okay, but as you know, things have changed. Some great companies came, and you're going to see some of the examples as we go forward. Now, I'm going to tell you something very interesting, as you can see about Vinod Khosla. So he said one thing about effectuation. The best theory of entrepreneurship you actually follow is effectuation, whether you've heard of it or not. So take my own case, right? I didn't know about effectuation. When I started out my first startup in the year 2000, or earlier than little bit earlier than 2000, that was my first startup. I didn't know that whatever I was doing was actually effectuation. So that's precisely the point. So most of our entrepreneurs, even today or in the past, have been following effectuation principles without knowing that's what is effectuation. So that's making it even more like, validating that what Dr. Saras came up with. So this is Dr. Sara Saraswathi. So I need to tell you a bit about her. She is someone who's been through multiple journeys of entrepreneurship. Out of that, 2 were successful, 3 were failures, and she thought there's something, why there is so many failures, and we need to do something about it. Can we do something to stop these failures? Can we reduce those failures? So she personally told me when she started this research, the percentage failure was 99.7%. And, she thought, is there a way we can improve the success, improve the rate? by teaching people so that they become better entrepreneurs. So that is the theory behind this. And you are seeing this particular screen. So this was last year. So this is the award ceremony of the Open Innovation Week when we announced the top 100 startups. So she was invited as a chief guest to award those top 100 ranking. And she was kindly there to not only give her lecture, but also to give away those awards. So that's the picture you're seeing. It's a very historical picture. Now, I want to tell you also about how she went about this particular research. She was very lucky to have Dr. Herbert Simon, a Nobel laureate for economics, as a guide at that point in time at Darden Business School in Virginia, and they came up with this idea that how to analyze why so many entrepreneurs are failures and very few are successful. And they went about this process, and that's what led to this what's called effectuation. Now, before I go, I would like to also tell you this is a conventional wisdom. What happens? You come up with an idea, right? So when you have a startup, what you do? First thing is you come up with an idea, then pitch to an investor. That's a huge market. Write a business plan, raise money, build and grow the venture, go and public, then sell, and go off to Bahamas. So this is the way. This is conventional wisdom, right? But what we did, I mean, before this happened, right? This has been going on for years, and even now it is happening. But what Saras did was, along with Dr. Herbert Simon, was to come up with a definition called expert entrepreneurs. So as you can see, if an entrepreneur fulfills these three criteria, then he or she is considered as an expert entrepreneur. Somebody has been in entrepreneurship 15 plus years, somebody who's been through multiple ventures, and I have at least one IPO. So if you fall in this category, then you can say they are also using effectuation. And this is how this particular research also happened. So when this Herbert Simon and Sarah sat down to do research, they found there were about 350 entrepreneurs who met this criteria. This is worldwide, and this included Bill Gates, Larry Ellison of Oracle, Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic, and so on. So these were the three most prominent names. Okay, so they wrote, Dr. Herbert Simon wrote a letter to all of them introducing this research and request them for time to contribute so that we can complete this research. So that's how Sarah started it. And then she came up with these principles, as you can see. The first one is called the bird in the hand. That is, whatever idea you start with is a bird in the hand. Then what happens with that idea? You go and talk to your friends, professors, people in your network, and so on. So this particular process that you do, talking to different people, doesn't cost you anything, right? So this is the affordable loss. So you can afford that loss. It doesn't cost you much. And let's say then somebody meets me, and then I say, okay, great, this is a good idea, but maybe my friend who's working for so and so, he got a better knowledge about it, go and meet him. So, like this, many people connect people forward, right? Then you get to meet with so many people, it's what's called the ecosystem, and this is called the crazy quilt because your ecosystem is something like it's a it's an ecosystem where you create a quilt. uh, just to give an example, is if you go to a tailor shop, you find a lot of cut pieces lying on the ground. So these are like different textures, different colors, different patterns. So if you just stitch them together, no doubt it's a quilt, but it's a crazy quilt. So that's your ecosystem, and so you have to make the decision of whom you want to collaborate with, and you as a founder has that prerogative of deciding, self-selecting, whom you want to partner with, who could be your investor, who could be your co-founder, who could be your customer, and so on. So you can decide all that. So the self-selection is what you're seeing as crazy quilt. Then once you've done all that, you realize the constraints, you understand all the challenges. Then the entrepreneur, what he does is he tries to overcome that. So we call this the lemonade principle. So here I want to tell you what led to this word called lemonade principle is because if I give you a nice fruit like an orange or an apple to eat, most people are going to say, wow, thank you very much, and release it. But if I were to give you lemon, what will you say? Most people are going to say, oh, it is sour. What will I do with it? But an entrepreneur will say, I'll convert that to the lemonade, right? So if you look at let's say life, there are a lot of lemons thrown at you. So if you can convert that, all those lemons into lemonade, you have found a success for that, right? So you have overcome those constraints. So that's what is the lemonade principle. Like I said, this is not only in entrepreneurship, but you can also apply in your personal life. And then one more thing, the last one. So you have, like most of us, about 14 hours a day, right? You can do a small thing and also a big thing. Why not do something very big, which will have impact and create value for a lot of people and a lot of ecosystems in the world? So that's the pilot principle. It is like to be, at a 36,000 feet level, then you can observe the whole canvas of what is the potential, what is the opportunity, etc. So that's since you're seeing from the 36,000 feet level and you're looking at the whole canvas, the whole opportunity. That's why it's called pilot in the plane or pilot principle. And I'm going to now quickly walk you through one of the examples of how effectuation was applied by these two great founders. You know them, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia. They were the two founders of what's today known as Airbnb. So, what happens? I told you, right? Bird in the hand. So, start with who you are, what you know, and whom you know. So, no preset goals. So, I'm just telling you, right? This is how entrepreneurship happens. Whatever knowledge you know, that's the bird in the hand. Then, what they do, they are, constrained. They don't have money. San Francisco is a very expensive place. It's a Silicon Valley, right? So, they decide to put earbuds in their own room and turn it into a lodging for with a promise of fresh cooked breakfast for people whoever wants to join. And then what happens? First customer comes in, and that is our own Indian guy Amal. So he's a very first customer who takes up this. And what happens is that here, as you can see, he's able to use this, and then these people, these two founders, are able to also test how it works and all that, right? So this is what you're seeing: invest what you can afford, lose extreme case it is zero, and expect no return, right? So that's also to do with you connecting with different people. So they decide to invite this guy Amol because they find maybe he can also add value. They can learn from him as he's a first customer. So then what happens? They also build this product, and then they get to meet their, this brilliant guy, brilliant engineer, Nathan Bechnesk, to join the venture. So, like I said, this is the crazy quilt, right? So these two founders self-select. They get, to look at their network, and they find this guy could be a very good co-founder. So then they invite him to join the company. So that's what happens. That's a crazy quilt principle. Then what happens is they realize the constraint is they don't have the money, they run out of money, and so on. So what they decide to do is they go to a game where they sell, as you can see on your left, the boxes of cereals, and they make money on that. Plus they get some additional funding in all about $30,000. Okay, and what they do is they convert with that money more air, bed, and breakfast, and then still they don't have enough money to do this. So what they do is they leave off with whatever cereals they have. They begin to live off that. Okay. Then what happens is that in 2009, spring of 2009, they joined Y Combinator, and then they changed their name to Airbnb, and they also get a little bit funding from Sequoia, and still no traction. Okay, these are all great names, as you know. Getting into YC is like it's like you got a ticket to your life, and then you also get investments from Sequoia, another great brand, and still there's no traction. Okay, imagine. Yeah. Now what happens is that they still struggle what to do. They don't know, and that's when this pilot principle comes into being. What they do is they begin to collaborate with professional photographers and to take great videos, great pictures, and that turns the whole table for them, right? So that's when they finally get going. When they put great pictures, great videos of the resorts or the homes and whatnot, which is being put on the platform, that's when things change. So that is what happens, and you can see this is how they employed the effectuation principles. And then in the year, as you can see, in the 2000, early 2000, they get 800% growth. It's amazing. From nowhere, they got this amount of growth, and they celebrate that with a great slick video that you can see in this, and it was published in this TechCrunch. And this is how Airbnb became very famous, and of course, you might know that they also went to list on the stock exchange. So now coming to a quick summary. So you start with who I am, what I know, whom I know. Okay, that is the bird in the hand. What can I do? So that is the affordable loss. Like, you can meet with friends, like you saw in the previous example. That's the affordable loss. Then you interact with other people and you can self-select stakeholders, and that's the crazy quilt. Then you get new opportunities, new means, you get all these constraints. Then you have to, find new goals, when new means, new market, etc. And that's what, happens through your lemonade principle. And then you have to look at, like I said, from the 36,000 feet level, and then you're able to make a success, like you saw how they began to capture those great videos, and they began to co-create with the customers who captured the videos. So it was like, as you know, right? They rent, they put, all the houses or villas or, whatever resorts that owner has or a landlord has. So they began to co-create with him, and that is what happened. And so now I'm going to get to something very interesting, which is what the entrepreneur goes through, right? Many people like us, if you see all the entrepreneurs, they build a product, they think theirs is a very unique idea, right? And you build it, people will come, investors will come to you. Build it and they will come. Okay, this is the biggest myth. There is nothing like that. As you know, in this, again, I will take the example of AI. So, it's much touted today in the world, right? Everybody talks about AI. So we think that if you're building a great product or a great solution in AI, you will get a lot of investors lining up at your door to put money in your company. Okay, this is a big myth because there are 7,000 AI startups today, and why would they come to you? What's your differentiation? Okay, so this is the biggest myth. Second myth is that there is nothing called self-made entrepreneur. We are always learning from others. People who have failed, who have success, everything, right? So we are always learning from other entrepreneurs. So we are made up of thousands of others, and that's what our own Prahalad Chabaria said. And then what we believe in under open startups is those who know can become big, co-creating with the big ones. So that is what open innovation and effectuation does. That you can be small, but if you come in combination, or let's say in cooperation with another big guy, you can make it a big success. That's our belief, and we have made it. And the number two is that we can tell you also it is to do with innovation movements, innovation platforms, and swarming of startups. So if you take this example of that AI I mentioned to you, over 7,000 startups are there. It's an example to say, that when there's a challenge, even take the COVID example, right? There are thousands of startups today solving similar problems all over the world. And this is to say that when a challenge is given, entrepreneurs want to solve it. And so they may come in different approaches, different methods, but they are trying to solve the problem. And so this is a great picture. As you can see, this is by Andy Rubin. Andy Rubin is the one who founded Android, but most people do not know Android was originally an operating system for cameras. And Andy Rubin was the inventor of that. And what happened is Google entered into a relationship and it bought him out. And that's how Android became part of Google. And so that is what you're seeing today. You can see it's more than 1 billion devices, much more today. But it is just to say that when a big guy collaborates with a small guy, this is how it happens. So, it changed also Google's fortunes. As you can see here, this small company that is Android, the maker, the individual, he was able to work with Google, and Google bought him out. And then what happened? All these big companies are collaborating, right? So this is a great example of co-creation, the apps that happen. So the apps that happen on the, let's say what you're seeing in Android Store or iStore are great examples of co-creation with a big company, right? Let's say I'm a small app developer. I can put my app, and this app is available to anybody in the world. So that's exactly what you're seeing there. So what is effectuation? Work with what's already within your control to co-create the future. So this is also to say, look at this COVID situation, right? We are in an uncertain situation. We do not know what is in the future. So in such a situation, it's best to collaborate because, when you have collective wisdom, it's not only your head or your mind, but it is a combination of several minds. So, we are very unlikely to go wrong. All of us are unlikely to go wrong. Few of us are going to be right. So that is why you take the collective wisdom. And that is the philosophy behind co-creation. And now we want to also say how we created the 100 Open Startups is the same way. That is to say, the big brands, the big companies, and the startups can co-create the future. And instead of pitching to investors, you can actually build your product with the support from corporate and make it, let's say, as a revenue-paying, let's say, activity. Then you can have several such customers. Then you'll be able to build your startup without investors' money and our own methodology. So this is how it works. Let me also take a look at my time. So I have about 15 minutes. I think I need another 5 minutes to finish, Evan. So
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
can,
good. No worries.
okay, great. So as you're seeing here, this is how the program works. The methodologies in the beginning of every cycle, problems are defined. So it is like a problem-solving approach, as opposed to you build solutions and products. This is the biggest mistake startups do. They build products and solutions and then look for problems. So we solved this major problem today. We found that by our research, 70%, of 70, even a little bit more than that, the number of failures is due to products and solutions that are not required by the market. So, so you have to, this is one of the reasons, we had a problem statement first. So whatever the startup is applying for now, or the researchers are applying for, you are applying for a purpose. So that is what I'm going to walk you through now. So in the beginning, we have these workshops and problem definition meetings with the corporate, and the problems are defined. That's what you see in the 100 Open Startups website. These are called as brand challenges. So there are 20 of them, to just to name a few. Innovative cities, then we have future of education, industry of the future. We have also something called as healthcare and well-being, and so on. So different verticals are there, and these are all the problem statements created by the corporate. And then what happens? Researchers, scientists, as well as startups anywhere in the world who has a solution can apply. So when they apply, they're in level 0. That means the solution is not validated. But in level 1, there are successful entrepreneurs from the past, there are consultants, experts, professors, academics, and so on, who have a knowledge or domain expertise in one particular vertical. What they do a voting in terms of a thumbs up to say how their solution matches with the problem statement. Okay, so these people are kind of validating a kind of a first level of filter. So more number of thumbs up a startup receives at this stage, they get pushed into next level called the level 2. So this level 2 is also we call the market. Okay, the corporate network is the market because they know what is required by customers, their customers, as well as their own internal requirements. So that is why it's called the market. So they do also an evaluation in terms of ABCD. So the A means it's very interesting, B means interesting but needs to evolve, C means futuristic, D means not interested. The more number of A's and B's the startup receives at this stage, they get pushed into next level called the level 3. And this level 3 is what we call as well as demo day, in other parlance. All over the world, people call it as demo day or pitch day. And we have the audience as investors. So the investors community, it can be VCs, can be angels, it can be also corporate venturing professionals. And what they do, they also do a voting in terms of how the startup is scalable, in terms of how the startup is going to become a kind of return on their investments, etc. So they measure them on all the financial parameters, right? So that's what happens in level 3. So just to tell you, from 0 to level 3, the average is about 10%. That means if 300 startups applied at level 0, only 3 make it. Okay, so that's like 1%. So 10% are invited, and from that, after this evaluation is done, only 1% get through. That means 3 startups get through to next level. That's our own event called the level 4 or the Open Innovation Week. And this, as you can see, is a very rigorous process from 300 to 3 startups. And then what happens is we invite those 3 to meet with corporate, and then they have the 20-minute one-on-one meetings that leads to over time, let's say 2 months to 3 months, into contracts. And those contracts, we have also measured them, in terms of how valuable they are for the startup. And there are points awarded. There are 16 types of relationships a startup can have with corporate. For each of those relationships, points are awarded. The cumulative number of this leads to what's called the ranking, 100 open startups ranking. That's why the term 100 open startups, because 100 is to signify top 100 ranking, open to signify open innovation and startups. So that's how the term was coined. And that is how, this particular ranking that we create, the level 5, is so valuable for the investors. And I must say, the level 4 is also an exit event for early stage investors who would have come at level 1 as a mentor or as an angel investor. So they would be bought out at level 4 by next stage investors, could be super angels, could be VCs, and so on. Because typically, the top 20, top 30 startups in the top 100, they would get about 20 to 30 contracts on average. Okay, so you imagine if a startup were to get 20 to 30 contracts, where is the need for them to get investments, right? And so after that, it's all about scaling. So it's a big boys play. The VCs come in, and it's a scaling game after that. So we don't even call them startups. It's called scale ups. So by the time they reach level 5, they've either received 2.5 million in funding or 2.5 million in investments. So this is how the program happens. So just to tell you, so far, just in the last 3 years, 21,000 contracts have been signed between 1,700 startups and 1,300 corporations that I touched upon in the beginning. Now, very quickly, what are these challenges? Of course, you can go to the website and you can see all of that, that these are different kinds of challenges. We have created different properties. And I need to also mention to you that we about the ranking for the technologies, 100 open techs, 100 open corps is a ranking for the corporate. And then we also created the 100 open angels, which is a platform for angel investments. So just to show you how a particular challenge works. So on your right, you see these are the corporates that are interested in this particular grand challenge, and they choose these two startups as winners, Lavayu and Jetta. And similarly, the industry of the future, you see this another grand challenge. So these are the corporates that are interested in this. And then what happens is that they selected these two are the best from their perspective as industry of the future, or what you call industry 4.0, or let's say the latest developments in manufacturing. And they selected this Nexto and eStocks. And you can also see this, who are the ones who have been supporting us continuously all these years. And this is all some of the finest brands in the world, most innovative companies, and they continue to be engaged. They are the ones helping our program to grow further to next level. And so just to summarize, this is from the last year, what happened in 1 year last year. These are some of the numbers. And what are the benefits from the executive's point of view? So these are the bubbles, as you see, access to the selected ranked innovative ideas. So the executive doesn't have to go to different events, and they need to go to one particular event because it's a summary of all the events. So I showed you the example of level 3. So any event in the world can use this as a pitching event or a demo day event, and the winner from that event can go to our level 4. And also, these organizers of different events can give their own awards to that level 3 event, which is their concluding event. So what happens is that we are giving them continuity in the same manner it works with incubators and accelerators. So the startups that have gone through, let's say, incubator, they go to level 3 directly from their incubator. They get fast tracked. And similarly, if they are part of an accelerator, they get fast tracked to level 4. So they don't have to go through the other 3 levels. So these are some of the advantages that you see there. And similarly, from the startup perspective, the small bubbles on your left, these are all well known. But what is most important on your right, the big bubble, they get access to large companies' resources not available in the VC world. So, this large knowledge, expertise, and also, the access to the various facilities of the corporate is also something very unique, which corporate will be able to offer to the startups. And so some of the examples of what has happened. So we've done a number of events from 2015 onwards. So this was one of the events called IIIF that happened in the Leela Palace in 2016. And this particular startup called Innovice won the first prize, and they got also the tickets covered to go to the level 4 event. So some of those winners, Innovice, KFX Labs, this is from IIT, Delhi. Near Ashore, there's another company from to do with smart cities. iColors is again from IIT Delhi. So these were the 4 startups that got selected from that event. And similarly, we had the World Startup Expo. Again, it was used. This was in 2016. Our system methodology was used, and 9 out of the 180 startups got selected, and they were invited for the level 4. You can see the other events, other pictures that are there, different events, and how they fared. So after going there, how the startup fared, what happened to them. So you can see some of them, like 10 startups who went there in the year 2018. So you can see this particular startup called Minimac. So they had a technology to convert, the motor oil or the automotive oil that is usually, say, thrown into the ground. They began to recycle it with an IP so that that oil can be reused. So that's the technology they had, and they got a lot of contracts. I think they are doing right now about $5 million, as revenue, which they didn't have at the beginning. So they benefited a lot. In fact, all those companies that you see here have grown through our platform, and I think one of them has already got acquired earlier on this year. And so this is a quick summary of level 1 to level 5. I think you know this. And just one of those, testimonials from the startup called iColors. This gentleman is from IIT Delhi, and he has shared what has happened for him. I think this is well known. We have over the years, right, thousands of such testimonials from several startups, how they benefited, and they are able to grow their startup to next level by co-creating with its corporate. And our own program actually began to collaborate, as you saw in the beginning. It started at UC Berkeley, but then Darden Business School. But later on, it went on to collaborate with MIT Sloan, with Stanford, with also with University of Virginia. And then you can see all the other big names like FGV. It's a #1 business school out of Brazil. Then Unicamp, USP, University of Sao Paulo, and so on. So there are several universities over the years we have been partnering with, and it became a case study of the Darden Business School. And then we have been running an MBA program with Cox Business School, University of Pittsburgh, and more importantly, at home at INB, Indian Institute of Management, we have introduced executive management programs, as well as different roundtables and different researches have happened to study how startups can work with corporate, or even SMEs can work with startups and then build value for each other. So this is in summary what has happened, and these are some of the events worldwide. And as I've already walked through, these are the various platforms we have internally, and that shows you right from ranking of the startup to creating the angel platform. We have covered the whole cycle so that it becomes a sustainable program. Just to say that what we've done is over the years, we have managed to create a sustainable innovation ecosystem, whereas an early stage investor comes in and he's able to get exit at the level 4. He is able to get some money, which he can cycle back into new investments, into new startups. So thereby, we have created a cycle. It's a kind of a cycle which is going to be perennial, so that it can push this wheel of innovation forward, and we are able to continue this going forward for several years to come. We've created a lot of employment contributions to the GDP. As you know, as entrepreneurship grows, it creates great impact for everyone in the ecosystem. So that is what we managed to do. So that's in a summary what we have achieved. And this is a level 4 event that you're seeing there. That's typically how our Open Innovation Week event looks. It's very large. It's about 60 to 70,000 square feet space. And we create different islands for the startup and corporate to collaborate. And then, let's say they meet for 20 minutes, and next 2 to 3 months, as I mentioned earlier, they become contracts. So I will stop here, and I would like to take questions. And if there are any other information that you want, I'm happy to share it with you. Maybe over to you.
Amazing, Virat. It was like great presentation, and I was able to understand the co-creation, effectuation, and hope the participants also go to know about all these bigger things. And now I think like along with this, I wanted to have Varad to uh, like uh, raise the curtain for the hackaholics, which will be act as a open innovation activity happening from AIC Raise together with. I'm just stopping sharing your screen, and I just
Yes,
want
yes,
to share our open innovation event, which we will be doing together.
yes, please.
So,
Yeah. So let me tell you, first of all, congratulations for coming up with this idea, because you have realized very early that we need to collaborate, and that's the first step. Because Indians culturally, for all with all due respect for what you've achieved, we don't collaborate. In our mind, we think we can do everything on our own. I think it is to do with the way you're brought up. Culturally, right from young age, you're brought to compete with your dearest friends. So your family tells you, "Hey, see, your close friend is getting first rank. What are you doing?" So you are always brought to compete, and that culture continues to grow in you, and that is why we don't collaborate. I think we need to shed that, and we should be aware. We should collaborate more. I think this alcoholic is a great step forward. I congratulate you, Edin, for launching this program with us. So it's a co-branded event for all those in the audience. So please participate, please collaborate, and make it a bigger program.
and as we told earlier, it will be a kind of level 3 for Open Innovation Week. So, who will be winning this event will be taking a bigger step with OI Week.
Yes. So I want to say that we are here to help you with, you know, helping the ideas. Let's say, people are going to come at this alcoholic. I presume a lot of people are starting the journey, right? And so when they start, they would have a lot of challenges. So we would like to help them, mentor them to various interventions that we have. We have incubators, of course, you are there. And then beyond that, if you want acceleration, we have interventions available. There are programs available, and we have this network of global incubators. That is something which we will be introducing to AIC Raise as a partner, and so AIC Raise can take this to next level. And all I wanted to say is that when we have a winner, those top three winners can be made eligible to go to our level three.
Okay. Thank you, Varad. And now we'll take up the questions. So we have a few questions comes up. Uh, how Dr. Nadish Hiramat, how limbing startups and MSMEs can leverage with 20 lakh or economic dose? I think it's from the government booster, economic booster by the prime minister. So how you think about the same?
Very, very good question. So, Professor, I want to tell you, Dr. Nandish, I want to answer it like this. What happens is today, the MSMEs are the ones who don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the resources to do R&D. They cannot do research the way the big companies can. So, if you really ask me, the people who need startups most are the MSMEs. Okay, they are the ones who need it, and startup and MSME can be an excellent synergistic relationship, and it has worked all over the world. I don't think there should be any reason why it's not work here. So I'm telling you how this 20 lakh crores can be implemented is we should bring mentors, we should bring those programs to make those relationships happen, right? What happens is that there is no immediate solution for anything. So what we have to do is we should have mentors, and these mentors have to be paid. And so for paying them, also to create a program, this money can be utilized to, let's say, come up with how they can iron out differences between MSMEs, how the startups can adopt the MSME culture, and MSMEs can also understand the challenges when they work with startups, because MSMEs mostly have been around for many years, and they've been struggling. They don't get a growth. So how the startup can come in with their fast growth culture, entrepreneurial culture, they are new, they are nimble, how they can bring the new technologies, new ideas, and then enable these MSMEs to grow faster. So I must say that the entrepreneurs, that is the startups themselves, have some knowledge. the MSME founders also have some knowledge, but that's not enough. So an institution like AIC or AIC Raise and so on, they can come and be this bridge. And then what happens is that this bridge can get operational expenses from this, that 20 lakh crores, that whatever has been sanctioned. This should be used for those kind of purposes. And then, this can be executed. This whole idea can be executed and we can bring success for both the sides.
Thank you, Varad. So I think like MSMEs can connect with the corporates through incubators or platforms like 100 Open Startups and all. Like I think that's the easier way to, because rather or else they can act as a B2B supplier for a corporate. There is a huge possibility in that. So in India, I think like most of the SMEs or MSMEs doesn't explore in that space much, because so if they start exploring global opportunities where they can be a supplier for B2B companies or corporates, it will be a great opportunity for Indian MSMEs. And the AIC Raise and like platforms like 100 Open Startups is ready to help in converting the IP or that way. And next question, this is Aninda. My question is, how can a startup which just an idea, but in terms of great concept, can assess a large corporate to co-create in a fastest possible way, and especially in the COVID-19 or pandemic situation?
Okay, good question, Aninda. So Aninda is, a former Accenture employee, and I know him from already for some time now. So Aninda, I want to tell you, you know this already, right? You've been in corporate for some time. How it works is that you have to go on to whatever idea you have, right? You have been talking to one particular idea. Take that idea itself as an example. Now, you have to go and meet and then try to understand how you can get this minimum viable product, how you can get a first customer who is going to agree with you to say, okay, we will build this together. And maybe for becoming the first customer, you can give some concessions to him. You don't give him the full price, but maybe you can charge him like 50% of that, right? So this is how you can start a relationship. And then for any corporate, right? Accenture, so I'm just taking Accenture example. So, Accenture has got a great program where you can go and pitch and can start the journey together. And then what happens is that, like I mentioned to you, they will be able to provide their resources, and along with your team, you'll be able to develop this product or the solution and then get the first customer, So as you know, Accenture itself is a consulting organization. So you as well as Accenture together go to a third customer, could be another client of Accenture, and then offer the solution together and we build it together. So what happens is, from a point of view of that big company, which is a client of Accenture, you are too risky. They don't want to work with you, but they're happy to work with Accenture because Accenture is a stable organization. They would like to, they know there are no risks. Risks are covered. So what happens is this big company covers the risks for you, and they kind of shelter you. And then, together you guys can co-create the solution, offer. There are, of course, going to be a lot of internal bugs and whatnot when you develop, but you and Accenture together will solve it and then deliver a fine product, finished product that the customer can accept. So you know this, right? How Accenture works. And so since you're an internal employee, you know how it works. And so since you know this already, you can work on those processes and ensure it meets them. I think the customer will accept, and that's the start of the journey. So we start with one client, two clients, and so on. Thereafter, you can scale this. Then it becomes a game where you constantly hire people, deliver on the project, build that traction. That's all you have to do, Aninda. Wish you all the best.
Okay, thank you, Varad. I think Anita got kind of answer for it. So now I have a question. Like all the corporates have a kind of long-term technology adoption cycles. So how a startup can get into this long, like if they're working on deep technology or something like biotech, it takes long time to the technology adoption. So how a startup can work with a corporate which have a long technology adoption cycle?
Yes. So this is also a good question because you notice that corporates So this is one of the reasons why we know acceleration in general, right? Corporate acceleration in general is a failure. It's because the nimbleness of the startups is not matched by the corporate because they are slow, and it's because there is somebody else who's paying for them, right? So that is why the corporate startup relationship is very hard. It's because the mindset or the way the corporate works is different from a startup. So there are many bright entrepreneurs who realize this very early and they don't want to work. So what happens is if there are multiple corporates like we have created, so as I said, you know, one, two, three, maybe they are slow, but there are 97 others in a batch of 100 corporates. There will be 97 others who are faster. You know, they want to work with you and then develop the solution. So I'm saying when you spread your canvas and work with more corporates, you're also spreading your risk rather than, you know, putting everything in one basket, working with one corporate. That is why we created this platform where you're working with 4,000 corporations, not one. So when you're putting the idea, it is available to all. So
Okay.
you're not risking yourself with one corporate, right? So that is also very important.
Okay. So along with that, I have another question. Like, if you are working with around 400 plus, 4,000 plus corporates, so how, if you can like point out the best practices for startups for the initial corporation, what like five pointers, if
Yeah,
you can mention good five practices to for the initial corporation, what it
yeah,
will be.
yeah. So the first thing is, of course, to understand the problem. So the biggest difference is, you know, the startup, right, always goes with the generic solution and try to, like I told you in the beginning, right, you build a solution or product and try to fit that, you know. So instead of that, you try to understand what's the problem. So go and meet a corporate, understand what problem they are facing, and then try to build a solution for it. That will be a better approach than you trying to fit your solution to what they have. It will not work out because, you know, many times, you know, when you're doing some things like that, it is not fitting 100% what they need. So they are kind of adjusting to it. So there is a startup which comes, which has met all the needs. Obviously, the corporate will work with them. So very important is always have the problem solving mindset, not solution looking for problems, right?
Okay.
And so that's first thing. The second thing is that don't build all the bells and whistles in one go. You know, very important is build certain features that are very critical, what the customer wants. That's called the MVP. Okay, go with an MVP and then start the customer acceptance. And once you've done that, you can build those bells and whistles, right? A lot of features, you can bring all of that later. But beginning always focus on that. So when you've done that, you have to remember the corporate works very structured. So that's an advantage, also a disadvantage, because when you work in a very structured way, you know they are going to be methodical. So if you can meet those, let us say those ticks, and you can keep on ticking, everything is great, and they're going to be paying you. Everything is signed off. You know that's very straightforward. But if it is on the other hand, it is like every time you have to make a lot of adjustments. You have built a product and you're trying to fit it to their requirements. A lot of adjustments, right? Corporate gets frustrated, and at the same time, right? They have, as you know, in their diary about 100 tasks to do every day, and your collaboration with one startup is one of the tasks. So if your engagement takes too long, it's very frustrating for them, right? So this is the second thing you should remember. Time, very important. You should be aware a corporate executive's time is very precious, and you should be able to adjust to that need and be precise. Don't be going all over the place. Be very precise what he wants, and that's what they appreciate. And you have to do a lot of preparation to get there. So that is the second thing, right? And the third thing, of course, is that you have to have mentors who have been in corporate. You have a team who has got experience working with corporate. That helps a lot because they are going to guide you. And then what happens is that you keep brainstorming with those people, your team or advisors, to understand how you should offer this, practice how to pitch this, etc. And when you do that, you become better and better. So then when you go and stand in front of a corporate, right, they are ruthless. So you have to be very precise. You have to be aware of the time. What I'm saying is that you have to continuously keep improving all these areas. And over time, you become yourself seasoned and experienced and be precise, what you went for, what you're offering. and then you can look at the relationship. And then what happens once you're contracted, start delivering, execute. So that's the next step. So you, when you promise something, always try to do it early, not later. So you may take 2-3 days and take time from them, but not always, right? Not, let's say, from promising a date and then going 10 days later. That means you've lost interest, you lost the traction. From the corporate perspective, you're a failure. So they would rather work with. There are hundreds of other startups coming to them. Why would they look at you? If you're taking too long for every step. So like I said, after that it's all about commitment and execution. So I'm noticing one thing, I'll tell you, because Indian startups, is that one, we exaggerate, we hype a lot. So don't do that. I'm noticing startups outside India, even they are 100% ready, they will say they are 60% ready, right? Whereas in India, they're only some 40% ready, they will say they're 100% ready. So that is a mindset, we have to change. So be truthful, truthful about what you are. Uh, at least don't exaggerate, right? Even if you're 100% ready, you say only you're 70% ready. That will put you in a better situation, and people will respect you. Okay. Second thing, we don't execute. We promise many things, so always be precise and execute correctly. So these are, if you follow those principles, you will be a winner, and you will be able to sign on one, two, three, four corporates. After that, the investors are going to come to you. You don't have to go to investors, because your solution is validated, your product is validated. After that, it's all about growth.
Okay, thank you, Varad. And it was a long conversation, and now we dragged 15 minutes more. And thanks for joining. And obviously, mostly the participants got benefited out of it. And we'll look forward for a long time partnership with 100 Open Startups. And we welcome everyone for joining for the Hackaholics and Open Innovation Hackathon happening on June 20, last weekend. So till then, we will be coming with more sessions on collaboration and co-creation, and how we can work on open innovation, connect with corporates and all. So
Yes.
thanks, Varad. Thanks for the amazing, insightful session. And we can wrap up this right now here. See you.
So what? 1 minute, just to tell you that I thought we will also give this exciting news that Moshe Porat is going to be speaking at your event. I thought you were going to announce that.
Okay.
I think you should take the honor of talking about it.
So probably I'll share the poster of the same along here.
Yes, yes. So as Ebin is setting it up, I will quickly tell you there are a lot of exciting sessions coming up, and one such is Moshe Porat. He's the founder of the Mesh Labs. So he's going to be talking to you. So Ebin, over to you.
Yeah, Moshe Porat will be talking with us on 27th May at 4 p.m. We are very happy to host Moshe along with 100 Open Startups. So along with this, we will be coming up with more insightful sessions about the global from Sao Paulo, Israel, all the we wanted to know about how we can go globally for Indian startups. As you mentioned, Indian startup doesn't know much about the global entrepreneurial DNA. So we wanted to put a kind of limelight into the global entrepreneurial DNA along with 100 Open Startups. So from next week, we will coming with Moshe Porat, and looking forward for more sessions.
Yes, thank you so much. So as exactly Ebin said, you need to understand a little bit about every entrepreneurial culture. We call the startup capitals of the world. So when you learn more and more about how other countries are working, you will be able to absorb some of those best practices, some of those methods, and we can also build it into our own startups. And we'll build that culture for becoming successful entrepreneurs. Thank you so much, Ebin, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Varad. Thanks for joining, and see you. Thanks for all the participants who joined. See you again for the next session. Till then, signing off. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Stay safe.